Welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you news that weighs heavy on the heart. Some truly remarkable people have recently left this world. In this video, we will share their stories, their legacy, their final chapters. As a sign of remembrance and in support of their memory, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your simple action can help others hear their stories and keep their memory alive. We won't delay any longer. Let's begin this tribute to those we've lost. In April in Asheville, North Carolina, the world bid farewell to Charles Raymond Hensley, a groundbreaking American biomedical engineer, researcher, and global health advocate whose work revolutionized the way medical devices interact with the human body. His name may not have been widely known to the general public, but within the world of medical science, he was revered as a visionary who reshaped the possibilities of healing. Charles was born in Dayton, Ohio, in the winter of 1951. His father, Leonard Hensley, was a machinist at a factory that built aircraft engines. His mother, Janice, was a school nurse with a deep belief in natural healing. Their household was modest, structured, and filled with love, built on values of resilience, humility, and hard work. Charles was the youngest of 4 children, and from an early age, he was fascinated by how things moved, broke, and could be mended. At 10 years old, he dismantled a broken radio just to rebuild it from scratch. At 12, he read a library copy of Gray's Anatomy from cover to cover. "I didn't want to be a doctor," he would later say. "I wanted to build the things that help doctors do the impossible." He attended the University of Michigan on a full academic scholarship, earning a dual degree in mechanical engineering and biology. He went on to complete his doctorate at Johns Hopkins University, focusing on nanotechnology and tissue integration, long before such terms were part of mainstream science. In 1983, Charles invented the Hensley scaffold, a biocompatible mesh implant that drastically improved outcomes for patients undergoing organ transplants by reducing rejection rates. This innovation, now standard in transplant surgery worldwide, is credited with saving tens of thousands of lives. But he didn't stop there. In the 90s, Charles shifted his focus to low-cost, scalable health solutions for the developing world. He founded the Global Access Device Initiative, GADI, which designed durable, solar-powered dialysis machines and low-maintenance prosthetics made from recycled materials. His 2002 project in rural Kenya, deploying modular vaccine coolers with self-regulating temperatures, was recognized by the World Health Organization as one of the decade's most impactful public health contributions. In 2008, Charles was awarded the National Medal of Technology and Innovation by the President of the United States for designing biomedical devices that dramatically expanded equitable access to life-saving care. The award sparked broader recognition, and he became a sought-after lecturer, though he continued to prefer quiet labs over podiums. His path, however, was not without hardship. In the early 2000s, he was pushed out of a major medical startup he had co-founded due to corporate disagreements over patents and profit models. "They wanted to sell hope," he later said. "I wanted to build it." He walked away with nothing and began again, this time working entirely through nonprofit structures. Charles married microbiologist Ellen Cho in 1979. Their relationship was built on curiosity, deep mutual respect, and quiet evenings filled with jazz records and handwritten letters. They had one son, Marcus, who became a public health advocate and frequently collaborated with his father on outreach missions. At home, Charles was introspective and methodical. He kept rows of journals filled with sketches, formulas, and quotes. He made his own herbal teas, loved woodworking, and could often be found fixing bicycles for neighborhood children. Despite his global work, he remained deeply rooted in his community, offering internships to underprivileged youth and teaching weekend science workshops at local libraries. He mentored hundreds of students, from MIT fellows to high school dropouts. His lab doors were always open. He believed education should be unlocked, unpriced, and unfinished. Among his most remembered quotes, "Invention without compassion is machinery. You don't need $1 million to save a life, just an idea that costs less than a bandage. The best technology makes itself unnecessary." In his final years, Charles was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He chose not to undergo aggressive treatment. Instead, he continued to write, mentor, and complete his final book, The Benevolent Circuit, a collection of essays on ethics in engineering published posthumously. His final public appearance was via livestream. Addressing graduating engineers at Georgia Tech sitting in a sunlit room, voice soft but firm, he said, "Whatever you build, let it serve the invisible ones." He passed away peacefully, in the same city where he built his first prototype in a garage lit only by a single bulb and unwavering hope. Charles Raymond Hensley left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in his writings, ideas, and students. In April, in Seattle, Washington, the world said goodbye to Judith N. Carver, an American environmental lawyer, policy architect, and wilderness advocate who spent over 4 decades shaping legislation, defending natural habitats, and mentoring the next generation of climate justice leaders. Her name was rarely in the headlines, but her fingerprints graced some of the most consequential environmental reforms of the 21st century. Judith was born in Helena, Montana, in the summer of 1954. Her mother, Roberta Carver, was a forest ranger who taught her how to track elk before she could ride a bike. Her father, Martin, was a public school teacher with a passion for constitutional law. Their family lived in a wood-heated cabin at the edge of the Lolo National Forest, where electricity flickered and books filled every corner. By the time Judith was 9, she had memorized the Latin names of native pines and was writing essays about clean water for her local 4-H club. But it wasn't until her teenage years, when she witnessed the ecological devastation of a copper mining spill in the Clark Fork River, that her purpose took root. "I knew then," she would later say, "that the law couldn't be just about words. It had to be about water, air, and life." She earned her undergraduate degree in political science at Stanford University, then attended Yale Law School, where she focused on environmental litigation. Her mentors included Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and ecological ethicist Dr. Marion Broom. After graduating in 1979, she returned to the Pacific Northwest, intent on protecting the land that raised her. In 1982, Judith co-founded the Cascadia Legal Alliance, a grassroots firm committed to defending endangered ecosystems and tribal land rights. One of her earliest and most public victories came in 1985, when she successfully argued State of Washington versus Silver Ridge Timber, a landmark case that halted deforestation in critical salmon spawning territory. The ruling established a national precedent for ecosystem-based management and is still taught in law schools today. Over the years, she helped draft more than 70 pieces of environmental legislation, including the Native River Reclamation Act, 1991, the Federal Sustainable Watersheds Bill, 2003, and the National Youth Climate Defense Act, 2016. In 2012, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for redefining environmental justice not as a luxury, but as a legal necessity. Yet Judith was not without struggle. In the early 90s, she faced public backlash for representing a coalition of Native American tribes in their legal battle against a powerful petrochemical company. Protesters labeled her un-American. Her car was vandalized, and donors withdrew funding from her firm. But she refused to walk away. "Justice doesn't clock out when it becomes unpopular," she told a shaken staff meeting. She was known as a ferocious litigator in court and a poet in private. At home, Judith was contemplative, warm, and frugal. She wore wool socks year-round, carried a battered leather briefcase she never replaced, and kept bees in her backyard. She wrote haiku in the margins of legal documents, hiked every Sunday without fail, and swore by the medicinal properties of chamomile and solitude. Judith never married. She often said the river was her partner and the mountains her children. Still, she fostered deep and lasting friendships with dozens of young lawyers, environmental scientists, and tribal elders. Many considered her a second mother, especially the interns she welcomed into her home for summer clerkships. Among her most quoted lines were, "Nature has no voice in court, so lend it yours. Silence is not neutrality, it is surrender. A law that cannot protect the smallest stream is not a law worth defending." She donated much of her earnings to rewilding projects and community gardens. In her final years, she co-authored a legal textbook, The Earth Has Standing, which reimagined the rights of nature as constitutional imperatives. The book has been translated into 9 languages and is now used in university programs across 4 continents. Judith was diagnosed with lymphoma in her late 60s. She approached her illness like she did the law, with clarity, grace, and defiance. Even as her strength waned, she continued to appear at hearings via video call, often flanked by stacks of case files and cups of herbal tea. Her last public appearance was at a youth-led climate summit in Vancouver. Standing beneath a red cedar, too weak to walk unassisted, she told the crowd, "You are not the next generation. You are the now. And the earth has never needed you more." She passed away in her sleep, in the same region where she first learned to read the wind in the trees and write her name in the dirt. Judith and Carver left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in her writings, ideas, and students. John Burke Krasinski was born on October 20, 1979 in Newton, Massachusetts, a leafy, deliberate suburb just west of Boston, where the sidewalks curve like commas and the air hums with a kind of academic quiet. Newton was a town of brick schools and soccer fields, of neatly trimmed hedges and generations who stayed put. Autumn arrived like a painting every year. Blazing oaks, crisp air scented with wood smoke, the sound of football whistles mingling with rustling leaves. There was safety in it, a sense of predictability that became a backdrop for a boy whose mind would eventually stray far beyond its tidy borders. John was the youngest of 3 sons born to Mary Claire née Doyle, a nurse known for her kindness and order, and Ronald Krasinski, a doctor of Polish descent, tall, composed, the kind of man who carried silence well. Their home was a blend of discipline and laughter, rooted in old Catholic traditions and blue-collar grit. Mary Claire's Irish warmth tempered Ronald's quiet precision, and their parenting revolved around 2 principles: work hard and don't take yourself too seriously. That second part, the humor, would become John's compass. Being the youngest, John learned early to read a room. His brothers, Paul and Kevin, were already carving paths, responsible, studious, athletic, and he found his own niche not through competition, but through observation. He listened, he waited, and when the time was right, he made people laugh. Not the loud kind of laugh, the surprised, grateful kind. The laugh that says, "I didn't know I needed that." He was a lanky kid with a goofy charm and a wide, sincere smile that made people feel at ease. Teachers loved him. Classmates trusted him. But he wasn't loud or commanding. He was the guy you leaned on in group projects, the one who remembered everyone's birthday, who gave quiet high fives in the hallway. He loved drawing, wrote little skits with his friends, and did impressions that cracked up his brothers at the dinner table. But underneath the cheer, there was a searching. John was deeply introspective, a thinker, a late-night worrier, a boy who sometimes wondered if he belonged in such a careful world. In 3rd grade, he broke his arm during a game and spent weeks at home watching old films. It was there, on a faded couch, in a room filled with soft afternoon light and the scent of tomato soup, that he first fell in love with storytelling. He memorized Back to the Future, acted out Indiana Jones, and imagined himself not as the hero, but as the storyteller, the one holding the camera. At Newton South High School, he began to bloom. He was popular but never arrogant. He joined the basketball team, And although he wasn't the best athlete, he made himself invaluable with hustle and humor. He also joined the school's theater department, at the urging of a teacher who saw a strange magic in his stillness. On stage, he discovered a freedom that surprised him. "It wasn't about being someone else," he said years later. "It was about being allowed to be more of myself." After high school, he spent a few months teaching English in Costa Rica, a formative time that awakened in him not just a sense of adventure, but humility. He learned how to fail with grace, how to listen without needing to reply. When he returned to the States, he enrolled at Brown University and majored in English. But more importantly, he immersed himself in theater. He studied playwriting, performance direction, and slowly, his voice as a creator began to take shape. He studied at the National Theatre Institute in Connecticut and later trained at the Royal Shakespeare Company. There, among seasoned actors and timeless scripts, John found himself both intimidated and exhilarated. He didn't have the gravitas of a classical lead, not yet. But he had something else, emotional accessibility. A way of making even the most complicated characters feel familiar. After graduating, he moved to New York, broke, hopeful, and willing. He worked as a waiter, answered phones, took odd jobs. There were rejections. Dozens. He nearly gave up. His parents encouraged him gently but never pushed. "You've already made us proud," his mother once wrote to him in a letter. "Now see if you can make yourself proud, too." And then came The Office. He almost didn't get the role. At the audition, he famously told a stranger in the waiting room, who turned out to be a producer, that he hoped the show wouldn't be some dumb Hollywood version of the British original. Honesty got him the job. As Jim Halpert, John became an unexpected icon. The smirk, the sideways glances to the camera, the perfect deadpan timing. But beneath the comedy was something deeper. The ache of a man who wanted more but didn't yet know how to reach for it. Jim was the everyman, and John played him with nuance and grace. Audiences connected instantly, not to a star but to a friend. Fame came, slowly, gently, and John met it with humility. He didn't chase celebrity. He stayed close to his roots, close to his family, to the values that raised him. But he wanted more than acting. He wanted to tell stories. He began writing and directing, and in 2018 released A Quiet Place, a horror film built not on gore, but on silence, on family, on fear so intimate it echoed. The film stunned critics. Audiences wept. And John, once known as the goofy office guy, was suddenly a visionary filmmaker. He made the film with his wife, actress Emily Blunt. A marriage built on laughter, respect, and creative fire. Together, they became not Hollywood royalty, but its beating heart. Their love was quiet, real, anchored in shared purpose. They had 2 daughters and raised them away from the spotlight, in a home where dinner conversations mattered more than premieres. John's later work, as Jack Ryan, as a producer, as a writer, reflected his evolution. He wasn't just entertaining. He was reflecting on fatherhood, on fear, on how silence can be louder than screams. He gave speeches about empathy, wrote essays on failure. In 2020, during the pandemic, he created Some Good News, a homemade show that spotlighted everyday joy in a time of global despair. It wasn't slick. It wasn't polished. It was John in a t-shirt, making the world feel just a little less broken. In his later years, he taught, quietly, privately. He mentored young actors, funded scholarships, directed plays in small theaters under fake names. He grew a bit grayer, a bit slower, but never lost that spark in his eyes. He passed away in his sleep at the age of 83, in a house near a lake, with a dog at his feet and a script on his nightstand. His final journal entry read, "I tried to leave people better than I found them. I hope that counts for something." And it did. The world remembered not just the face, not just the roles, but the feeling he gave them. That laughter could be soft. That stories could heal. That kindness was its own form of genius. John Krasinski wasn't the loudest voice, but he was the one you leaned in to hear and found yourself better for having listened.